Hey guys, tonight we're curling up in a cold stone chamber that smells faintly of lavender, sweat, and maybe a bit of panic. You're sitting on straw-stuffed bedding, surrounded by flickering tallow candles. It's dim, it's drafty, and you're about to give birth. In the Middle Ages, no epidural, no monitors, no sterile anything. Just you, your breath, some herbs in a pouch, and a midwife who might also moonlight as the town beekeeper. The walls echo with the sounds of women groaning, sometimes chanting, while nearby, someone boils water over an open hearth, though no one's entirely sure why. Maybe it's to clean. Maybe it's just tradition. You probably won't survive this. Not being dramatic, it's just that medieval childbirth came with up to a 20% lifetime maternal death rate. That's basically playing reproductive roulette every time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The room where you lie is called a birthing chamber, but it feels more like a holding cell for pain. The shutters are closed, not because it's cold, but because people believed light and air could open the body too much and make things worse. You're swaddled in blankets stuffed with straw and maybe laced with herbs like rue or mugwort, which supposedly ease pain. Spoiler, they don't. Everything here is dark. Even the sounds are muted, except for the rhythmic pacing of the midwife's feet and your own shallow breathing. You might hear whispers, some in prayer, some in hushed medical guesswork. The atmosphere is reverent but tense, like everyone's watching a storm roll in but pretending it's just a little rain. It doesn't help that people are constantly crossing themselves, muttering phrases like, "God protect her womb," or "Saint Margaret, deliver her." Saint Margaret, by the way, is the go-to patron saint for childbirth, thanks to a legend where she was swallowed by a dragon and burst out of its belly unharmed. Comforting, right? There are no doctors here. Physicians are for nobles, or more likely, for men. And even then, they aren't exactly reliable. If you're lucky, you've got a seasoned midwife. If you're really lucky, she hasn't had too many patients die recently. Her knowledge is mostly passed down orally, from midwife to apprentice, based on what worked last time, or seem to dot there's a pile of linens nearby, all off-white and stiff from prior washings. These are not sterile. Germ theory won't be around for another 600 years. Instead, the belief is that sickness comes from bad humors, miasmas, or even looking the wrong person in the eye. You're not just at risk from the birth, you're at risk from the air itself. And the tools? The ones in the corner wrapped in cloth? They're probably bone-handled knives, hooks, and wooden spoons shaped for unknown purposes. They might be for assisting with delivery or preparing stew. Hard to say. The midwife dabs your forehead with a cloth soaked in rose water and vinegar. That's the high-end treatment. For most, it's just cold water and maybe a whispered prayer. She checks your pulse. Not with a watch, of course, but by touching your wrist and looking into your eyes, as if intuition might read your fate better than anything measurable. At your feet sits a small pot of burning herbs. The smell is overwhelming. Sage, perhaps, or camphor, intended to calm the womb. Some believe the smoke can chase away evil spirits. Others say it helps the baby find its way out. No one really agrees. Historians still argue whether this practice was medicinal, spiritual, or just a convenient excuse to mask the smell of blood. Occasionally, someone brings in a charm, maybe a stone with a hole in it, or a carved figurine of a fertility goddess. These are slipped under your mattress or into your hand. They're magic unspoken but deeply hoped for. And if things get dire, someone might run off to get the local priest. Not to help, but to read the last rites. The tension is oddly polite. No one's panicking openly, but make no mistake, everyone here knows that childbirth is a gamble. They've seen sisters, neighbors, and mothers pass away after giving life. And still, every year, women go through it again. Because the alternative, not bearing children, could mean abandonment, suspicion, or worse. The irony is rich. You lie in bed, risking your life to bring forth a new one, while the people outside, the ones who'll name the baby, raise it, and possibly arrange its marriage at age 6, are mostly men who've never even stepped into this room. Someone hums softly near your ear. It's not a lullaby. It's a chant in Latin, passed down from another woman in another century. She probably died in childbirth too. The chant asks for strength, for safety, for the womb to open like a flower. Your body doesn't feel floral. It feels like it's breaking apart. And the worst part, you haven't even started pushing yet. You blink slowly, trying to stay conscious as another contraction surges through you like a tidal wave that forgot to ask permission. The midwife's hands are on your belly now, gently pressing, listening not with instruments but with instinct. She mutters something about the baby's position, though you're not sure if it's good news or bad. Probably bad. Things rarely seem to be just fine in here. She introduces herself again, softly this time, in case you'd forgotten. Her name is Aldith, and she's delivered dozens, maybe hundreds, of babies. She has the hands of a healer and the posture of someone who's buried most of her siblings. There's a small pouch tied to her belt, and when you ask what's in it, she smiles cryptically and says, "All the things that keep death confused." The pouch, as it turns out, contains dried herbs, clove buds, a tiny wooden crucifix, and a few curved tools carved from bone. It also includes a small lump of garlic, not for flavoring soup, but for warding off evil spirits or bad air, or possibly for insertion into, well, places garlic really shouldn't go. Medieval belief held that strong-smelling substances could repel whatever invisible force was causing pain or illness. There's something oddly comforting about how confident Aldith is in these beliefs, even if they sound like something you'd hear in a fantasy novel. She starts whispering instructions, her tone firm but reassuring. "Breathe like you're blowing on embers," she says. "Not flames, embers." You try. It helps, sort of. At least it distracts you from the fact that her hands, steady as they are, haven't been washed. Soap is a luxury, and hygiene, as a concept, hasn't quite arrived. Water is often too cold or too impure for washing. Better to trust in prayers and potions. Aldith takes a scrap of cloth soaked in wine and offers it to you to bite down on. It tastes sour, probably from the cask sitting out too long, but it dulls the edge of your panic. She tucks a bit of lavender near your shoulder. "So you remember something nice," she explains. You're not sure if she means during the birth or after. Midwives like Aldith were more than just birth attendants. In many villages, they also acted as herbalists, surgeons, psychologists, and, in whispered accusations, witches. The church both relied on and distrusted them. They were often the only ones with practical knowledge of childbirth, yet they existed in a liminal space between respect and suspicion. Historians still argue whether midwives were empowering figures for women or tools of the patriarchal system that confined them. Some midwives used amulets, relics, or spoken charms during delivery. Others would draw signs on the floor or sprinkle salt at the doorway. The idea was to protect the laboring woman from malevolent spirits or fate itself. And while it sounds silly now, consider this. If you had no medicine, no anesthesia, and no understanding of infection, wouldn't you reach for anything that might help, even a whispered spell? On a small wooden table sits a bowl of thick porridge, now cold and forgotten. It was meant to keep your strength up, but the thought of eating makes your stomach churn. A second bowl, this one full of goat's milk mixed with powdered fennel, was meant for afterbirth. Fennel was thought to stimulate milk production, though no one could explain why. Still can't, really, your legs tremble. Aldith slips a hand behind your neck and supports you gently. "Almost there," she lies. She's a good liar. She's been doing it for decades. Just then, another figure slips into the room. It's the apprentice, barely 15, wide-eyed, gripping a towel as if it's a sword. She's here to learn. She's also here because it takes more than one woman to birth a child when things go wrong, and things often go wrong. You lock eyes with her, and for a second, you both understand something unspoken. She's afraid of what's coming too. There's a long moment where nothing happens. The room is still, save for the fire crackling and the low chants from Aldith. You feel the sweat slide down your temples, the sting in your lower back, the ache in your thighs. And then another wave. You scream because that's what your body needs to do. The apprentice jumps. Aldith doesn't even flinch. Between contractions, Aldith rubs oil onto your thighs. Maybe olive, maybe something more local, like walnut. It's meant to keep your skin supple. It doesn't help much. Still, it's more attention than most women received in this time, especially if you're poor, or unlucky, or both. You hear the word tarrying whispered. That's not good. It means the baby isn't moving. It's lingering, as if unsure whether to enter the world. And in the Middle Ages, that hesitation can be fatal. There are no ultrasounds, no emergency C-sections, just guesses, and faith. So much faith. Aldith adjusts the pillows behind you and reaches for a stick with cloth wound around it, the so-called birthing wand. Some say it was meant to give the mother something to grip. Others believed it conducted divine energy. Either way, it hurts your hands and does nothing for the contractions, which are now stacking one after the other like waves pounding a cliff. As the apprentice wrings out a rag to wipe your face, she whispers a question to Aldith. You catch only a fragment. What if she? Aldith silences her with a look. You don't need to hear the rest to know it ends with dies. She lights another bundle of herbs. This one smells sharp, juniper and something bitter. To cleanse the soul, she says. You try to focus on the scent. Anything to ignore the building pressure. It's like your body is folding in on itself. Outside, bells ring softly from the chapel. You can hear distant voices. Someone laughing, a child crying, a door creaking open. The world continues while yours narrows down to a single unbearable point. You wonder briefly whether you'll get to see the sky again. It's not a dramatic thought, it's just practical. And still, Aldith stands firm, still murmuring, still wiping your brow, still preparing for what may come next. Life, or death, or both, wrapped together in a wet linen cloth. You lose track of time. Minutes stretch like candle wax under heat, long and dripping and impossible to measure. All you know is that the pain hasn't stopped. It only changes shape, twisting, pulling, tightening, then receding for just long enough to make you fear its return. And now there's blood, not the usual kind. This is different. It soaks through the linens beneath you, and the air shifts. The women around you can smell it too. Aldith doesn't say anything, but you see the flicker in her eyes. Not panic, just calculation. Blood is normal, to a point. But when it starts to pool, when it starts to thicken under your thighs, when it begins to stain your hands as you clutch your belly, that's when the real danger begins. You're hemorrhaging, though no one uses that word. They don't have that vocabulary yet. Instead, they speak in analogies. The tide is too high. The moon has turned. Her waters are draining back to the earth. You half hear someone mutter about bad blood, like it's a personality trait. Not a symptom. There's no gauze, no saline, just rags and the occasional wine-soaked cloth. Someone tries to press one against your thigh, but the bleeding isn't stopping. The apprentice runs to the hearth, boiling more water, though again, no one can explain why that helps. It doesn't sterilize anything. It just gives trembling hands something to do. Aldith pulls out a leather pouch. Inside is a ball of crushed herbs, wrapped in wool, meant to be pressed to your abdomen. The recipe probably includes comfrey, yarrow, and maybe cinnamon bark. It smells like a spice merchant's shop set on fire. This is their version of postpartum care. Apply pressure, say a prayer, hope. You vaguely remember a neighbor who died last year giving birth to her third child. They said she bled out like a spring lamb. You'd laughed awkwardly then, the way people do when death is still hypothetical. Now you're realizing it's not a metaphor. It's an exit strategy. Postpartum hemorrhage is one of the leading killers of women in the Middle Ages. The uterus contracts poorly or not at all. The placenta might detach incorrectly. Sometimes parts are left inside. No one knows. No one understands. Historians still argue whether midwives had any consistent, effective methods to treat it, or whether they mostly relied on luck and ritual. Aldith leans in and murmurs something in your ear. A charm, maybe, or just nonsense to ground you. "Hold on," she says. "Hold on," like it's that easy. You try to focus on your breath. In through your nose, out through your mouth. But your head is spinning now. You feel cold, which doesn't make sense. The fire's still burning, and your skin is slick with sweat. But the chill is inside you, creeps through your bones like winter fog. The apprentice is crying now, quietly. She tries to hide it, but you see the tears slip down her cheek. She's holding a cup of ale, trying to pour it between your lips. You cough instead, and some of it spills down your chin. It burns your throat, or maybe that's just your imagination. Aldith presses both hands on your belly. Hard. You gasp. It's like being kicked from the inside. She's trying to make your womb contract. That's her only weapon. If it works, the bleeding might slow. If it doesn't, well, they'll wrap you in linen and bury you by sundown. Somewhere in the corner of the room, you hear a lullaby. Someone's humming again. It's not for you. It's for the baby. You'd almost forgotten there's another life here, waiting to emerge. But right now, it's your body on the line. A flash of movement. Someone rushes in with a scrap of dried moss. Sphagnum moss if you're lucky. It's absorbent, antibacterial, even though they don't know that. They just know it sometimes slows the bleeding. They pack it between your legs like an offering. You feel it soak through almost immediately. You're slipping. That much is clear. Everything is too bright, then too dim. You blink, and the walls melt into colors and shadows. You see your mother's face, or think you do. Then it's gone again. Aldith slaps your cheek lightly. "Stay awake," she hisses, gentle but firm. "You're not done yet." She's right. The baby's still inside you. And if you go now, it goes too. She calls for a tincture. Someone hands her a bottle with no label, just wax sealing the top. It's a poppy syrup, opium, basically. Dangerous, but sometimes necessary. She gives you just a drop, enough to blur the edges without knocking you out. You taste bitterness and metal, like chewing on old coins. It starts to work. Not the pain, you still feel every shred of that. But the panic fades slightly, like you're watching yourself from across the room. In the haze, you think about all the women who've done this before you. Women with names you'll never know. Who lived, who died, who endured it again and again without understanding why it was so dangerous, so final. You wonder if they screamed like you, or if they stayed silent to keep their dignity. Someone ties a strip of cloth around your upper thigh. A tourniquet? Probably not. It's more symbolic than medical. They believe it can redirect the blood. Can't, but they try anyway. The room starts to brighten. Morning, maybe. You didn't notice the night passing. A rooster crows outside, oblivious to the theater of life and death playing out a few feet away. Then, slowly, the bleeding slows. Not because of magic. Not because of prayers. Maybe Aldith's pressure helped. Maybe your womb got the hint. Or maybe, like so many women before you, you just got lucky. Aldith breathes a slow sigh and nods. She doesn't smile. Not yet. It's not over. But for now, the worst has passed. Or so it seems. The apprentice slumps against the wall, exhausted. Her hands are red, her eyes glassy. She's just watched the edge of the abyss. And you both know it. You close your eyes just for a moment and whisper to yourself, "Still here." Your body feels like it's made of wax now, barely holding its shape, barely registering the movement around you. Every nerve is frayed. Every breath takes effort. But you're not allowed to rest just yet. There's still a baby inside you, remember? And unfortunately, the bleeding wasn't the final trial. It was just the prelude to what they call hard labor, a phrase that now feels sarcastically understated. What's coming next makes the last few hours look like warm-up stretches. Aldith squints toward your belly, her expression like someone trying to decipher a complicated stew recipe that could explode. Her hands hover just above your abdomen. You're trembling again, not just from pain but from the overwhelming pressure building inside your hips. You feel like your spine is being pulled apart by ropes in two different directions. Someone adjusts your position, slipping more straw under your back and lifting your legs slightly with a rolled blanket. This is as close as you'll get to a birthing chair unless you're wealthy. A proper chair would have armrests, a crescent cut into the seat, maybe even a footrest. But here, you get lumpy straw and two women holding your knees back like human scaffolding. And that poor apprentice, her job now is to hold your foot in place while not fainting. She keeps mouthing prayers, or maybe just trying to stay upright. Aldith instructs you to push, not scream, push, like you're trying to expel a watermelon through a keyhole. You try, you really do, but your body's almost too tired to listen. Now, you feel it, something shifting downward. The pressure increases tenfold. It feels like your bones are dislocating. They might be. Pelvic separation during labor wasn't uncommon, especially when nutrition was poor and the pelvis hadn't fully fused. You cry out, not elegantly, just raw, cracked throat, gut-deep anguish. The women encourage you, their voices calm and rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Good. Yes. Again. It's like a medieval version of a yoga class from hell. Then Aldith leans in and says quietly, "The baby's turned wrong." Just those 4 words. A cold spike stabs your chest. Malposition. That's what modern medicine would call it. But back then, it was a sign of bad luck, of a stubborn spirit, of divine punishment. Maybe you had impure thoughts. Maybe you envied your neighbor's goat. Maybe the moon is just angry tonight. Who knows? Historically, there were crude techniques to turn the baby by manipulating the belly or reaching inside. Some midwives had the experience. Others did more harm than good. Historians still argue whether medieval birth attendants had any consistent knowledge of fetal positioning, or whether most of it was improvisation coated in superstition. Aldith thinks. She mutters. She places both hands on your belly again and pushes, slowly and deliberately, as if rearranging furniture made of flesh. You want to scream at her to stop, but you also want this to end. She tells you to push again. You do, those stars are dancing at the edges of your vision now. It's not just pain, it's the sensation of being turned inside out. Suddenly, something gives. Not a pop, more like a shift in gravity. The baby has moved, at least partially. Aldith nods. You can almost see relief ripple across her face. "Now," she says, "now push." And you do, with the last sliver of strength you didn't know you had. The pressure becomes unbearable. Your face contorts. Your jaw aches from clenching. There's a noise, a wet, strange noise that only means one thing. The baby is coming. The apprentice gasps. You hear water splash onto the floor. Someone knocks over a bowl. But Aldith is focused, eyes narrowed, hands ready. A moment stretches into forever. And then, with a final wave of pain so massive it blots out your name, the child emerges, not crying. Not yet. Just a wet, purplish thing held in Aldith's steady hands. You panic for half a second. Is it breathing? A slap. A rub. A few quick movements with a cloth. Then there it is. The first sharp wail, high-pitched and shrill, like a bird discovering its voice. You want to cry, too, but you're too spent. You just lie there, staring at the ceiling beams, which now seem impossibly far away. Someone says something about a boy, or maybe a girl. You don't care. You just want sleep. But no, you're still not done. There's the afterbirth. That's the part no one talks about. The placenta. It has to come out too. And if it doesn't, infection, fever, death. So Aldith waits. She massages your stomach again, and you feel more pressure, more warmth, more blood. Eventually, it emerges, a dull gray-red thing. The apprentice stares at it like it might bite. Aldith inspects it carefully. "Whole," she says, which is good. If a piece were missing, you'd be in even more trouble. She wraps the placenta in cloth, then buries it near the hearth. Some do it for ritual, others just to keep it from attracting animals. Either way, it's gone. You're shaking now. The adrenaline is wearing off, and your body feels like a deflated wineskin. Someone wraps you in another wool blanket. You've never been this cold and hot at the same time. They place the baby beside you, still sticky, still wailing, but alive. Both of you somehow alive. The apprentice brings a mug of something warm. It smells like broth or maybe weak beer. You sip it, hands trembling. The room is dimmer now, candles burning low. No more urgency, just exhaustion. They won't sew you up. There are no stitches. If you tore, and you probably did, it will either heal on its own or it won't. There's a bowl of honey being prepared to smear on the wound. Honey is antibacterial, though they wouldn't know the term. They just know it draws out the rot. Your legs are numb. Your lips are cracked. Your child, your tiny, loud, squirming child, is rooting for your breast. Aldith helps you position it. "Let the baby find the way," she says, and you try to believe her as the baby latches. You feel a new pain, sharp, surprising, but this time it's different. It's the pain of something beginning, not ending. And in that moment, wrapped in wool and sweat and silence, you realize you made it. You survived childbirth in the Middle Ages. For now, the room is quiet now, except for the soft smacks of suckling and the crackle of the fire, which seems to have shrunk to embers. You're lying half upright, swaddled in every blanket they could find, skin sticky, bones hollow, arms trembling. And yet, the baby, your baby, is curled against you like a warm little coal. Eyes closed, breath shallow but steady. You think this is the end, right? The ordeal is over. Not quite. Now comes the postpartum phase. And in the Middle Ages, that isn't just recovery. It's another kind of survival challenge, one that lasts for weeks. In fact, there's a word for it: lying in. You're supposed to stay in bed, isolated from the outside world, for anywhere from 9 days to 6 weeks, depending on your region, religion, and whether your neighbors are nosy. But lying in isn't the relaxing spa retreat you might imagine. No one's bringing you ice water with lemon. There are no frozen peas for swelling, no lactation consultants. Just you, your sore body, a leaking baby, and a rotating door of relatives trying to help, judge, or, if you're lucky, both at once. Aldith instructs the apprentice to make you mother's milk tea. It's more of a warm herb broth, usually a mix of fennel, nettle, and anise. The theory: it helps your milk come in, though historians still argue whether any of these potions actually worked or just gave everyone something to do while waiting. You sip it with effort. Everything aches. Your lower belly feels like it's been trampled by oxen. That's your uterus slowly contracting back to size. And it's doing it without warning, often during feeding. Surprise. More cramps. But now there's no dramatic music. Just constant discomfort with the occasional bonus of nausea. And then there's the lochia. You don't remember anyone warning you about the lochia. It's the post-birth discharge. Blood, mucus, tissue. All the joyful leftovers your body needs to purge. And it can last for weeks. You're changing cloth rags constantly. The apprentice is assigned laundry duty. She no longer makes eye contact with the pile.no pads. No elastic underwear, just linen strips, sometimes held in place with a belt-like contraption. If you leak, too bad. If you get an infection, even worse, especially because there's no such thing as penicillin yet. And a uterine infection could spread before anyone realizes something's wrong. You're supposed to stay indoors, away from wind, from evil spirits, from judgmental neighbors. The church frowns on women appearing in public before their purification ceremony. That's right, you're considered unclean after giving birth. There's an official rite for that called churching. It usually happens around 40 days post-birth, depending on whether you had a boy or a girl. Girls mean more time. Of course, you're marked by what just happened. Even if you're alive and well, the ordeal has changed you. People believe you're vulnerable now, spiritually porous. Bad air might get in. Demons might get in. You might curse someone without meaning to. So people tread carefully. Except your cousin, who barges in on day 3, declares your baby too quiet, and insists you rub garlic on its head. To ward off colic, she says. You almost throw a pillow at her, but you're too sore. And speaking of colic, yes, babies cry. A lot. Your little one, sweet as they are, screams with the full strength of underdeveloped lungs. You try everything. Warm milk, walking, singing, bouncing, whispering spells you don't believe in. The apprentice swears by a drop of sugared wine on the tongue. It works for 3 minutes. Then the howling resumes. Sleep? Don't be ridiculous. You catnap between feeds, but each time you close your eyes, there's a new reason to wake. A wet cloth falling off your belly, a draft through the shutters, the sensation of your own body betraying you again. Soaked, swollen, or just confused. And the pain. Your breasts are engorged now, heavy and hot. The baby latches badly and cracks your skin. It hurts. You wince each time. Aldith applies goose fat as a balm. You don't ask what bird it came from, just pray it helps. You wonder how women do this again, and again, and again, because most do. Fertility is high. Contraception is rare and usually ineffective. Some women might try inserting wool soaked in vinegar as a kind of barrier. Others rely on rhythm or just exhaustion. But more children are expected, desired even, because many won't survive infancy. 1 in 3, sometimes more. And every time you survive childbirth, you're reminded that you might not be so lucky next time. Still, there are moments, quiet ones. The baby sleeps. Your body doesn't hurt quite as much. Someone leaves broth at your bedside. You sip it slowly, letting the warmth fill you from the inside out. The world feels softer, distant, like it's spinning at a slightly safer speed now. Aldith visits each day, checking your belly, asking about your dreams. Dreams were considered important post-birth. A bad one could mean sickness. A good one, a sign your body was healing. You tell her you dreamed of water, rising tides, a little boat drifting across it. She nods, grave. You'll need another child soon. You don't know if she means it as a warning or a promise. The baby coos softly beside you. The apprentice is learning to hold them. She's still awkward but getting better. You wonder if she'll be the midwife for your daughter one day. Or maybe for you again, should fate decide you haven't suffered enough. You trace the baby's tiny fingers. You whisper nonsense. You sing old lullabies. The pain hasn't gone. It won't for a while. But for the first time, you feel something else settle in alongside it. Relief. You're still here. Still breathing. And for tonight, that's enough. You wake in the middle of the night, startled by silence. For a moment, you think something's wrong. The baby isn't crying. But no, they're just sleeping soundly beside you. Mouth open, fingers curled like tiny roots. You listen to the rhythmic rise and fall of their chest and breathe in sync, letting your own nerves unwind. Slightly, it's a strange feeling, this new life. Not just the one curled up next to you, but yours too. You've changed. Not metaphorically, though certainly that, but physically, you're no longer the person who trudged into this room days ago. Your hips feel broader, your skin looser. There's a soreness in places you didn't know could be sore. Even your voice is different, hoarser, quieter, like it was wrung out with the rest of you. And the strange thing is, none of this is considered unusual. Women in the Middle Ages were expected to bounce back with an almost mythical endurance. The lying-in period was supposed to offer time to recover, yes, but there wasn't much patience for true rest. Within days, you'd be encouraged to start cooking again, caring for older children, tending animals. Assuming your bleeding wasn't too heavy and no fever set in, that is. Postpartum hemorrhage, by the way, was a known risk. They wouldn't call it that, but they knew to fear excessive flowing or the red tide. Some midwives might give you a tonic, wine boiled with nettles or crushed coral mixed with vinegar. Others might press heated stones to your belly. Whether any of it helped is still debated by scholars. Some think the heat may have reduced uterine bleeding. Others argue it was pure chance if a woman survived. And yet, here you are, still alive. You feel the wetness of your linen cloth again. It's soaked. The apprentice comes to help you change it. She tries to be gentle, but there's no way to avoid the sting. You mutter a joke through gritted teeth, and she laughs nervously. You're funny for someone who's nearly bled out. The humor helps. Kind of. They don't have a word for postpartum depression. But you've heard stories of women who go quiet after birth, who stare at walls for days, who wander into the forest and forget to come back. Some say it's spirits. Others, bad humors or womb imbalance. You wonder if it's just exhaustion, or fear, or the weight of living when so many don't. You remember hearing about Ellen, the woman from 3 farms over. She died 2 days after giving birth, feverish and shaking, her husband too afraid to send for help. The midwife said her blood turned sour. That's all anyone could offer. No explanation, no prevention, just bad luck. So you watch yourself closely. You track your thoughts when they get too dark, like when you imagine your baby slipping out of your arms and into the hearth. You blink hard, take a deep breath, and touch their chest to feel the heartbeat. The apprentice makes you porridge. It's gritty and bland, but warm. You eat it slowly, savoring the fact that your hands are steady enough to hold a spoon. That wasn't true yesterday. Later that day, your neighbor visits. She brings a charm, just a tiny sack of herbs and thread meant to hang above the baby's cradle. To keep the night hag away, she says. You raise an eyebrow. She sits on the baby's chest and steals breath. The neighbor explains, absolutely serious. This is common. Folk beliefs about protection are thick around newborns. Red ribbons tied to wrists, garlic tucked under pillows, iron keys placed under beds. Historians still argue whether these rituals had actual protective value, perhaps discouraging animals or strangers, or were purely symbolic. Either way, they gave people a sense of control. And in a world where almost nothing could be controlled, that mattered deeply, you hang the charm, not because you believe in night hags necessarily, but because it can't hurt. And then the bleeding returns heavier for a moment. You panic, thinking it's starting again. Aldith is called. She inspects the cloths, nods, and hands you dried raspberry leaves to steep in water. Helps tighten the womb, she says. The drink is bitter. You grimace and swallow it anyway. The baby cries again, but this time, it's not the frantic shriek. It's the whimper of hunger. You adjust your gown and let them latch. The pain stings less today. Your body is adapting, slowly. The other children in the house peek through the door. They're curious, wide-eyed, whispering to each other. You wave them in, and they crowd around, giggling at the baby's noises. One asks if the baby can talk yet. Another wants to know if it came out of your belly button. You laugh, really laugh, for the first time since labor. The day passes in a haze of feeding, resting, and having your hair gently braided by the apprentice, who confesses she wants to be a full midwife someday. You think I could? She asks. You nod. You've seen it up close now, you say, and you didn't faint. That's more than I can say for half the men in this village. Night falls. You lie beside the baby again, your belly wrapped in warm cloth, your thighs bruised but no longer trembling. The room is still. Outside, you hear wind in the trees and the occasional rustle of chickens. Your thoughts drift to the future. Will this baby make it past infancy? Past the first fever? The first tooth? You want to hope. You also want to protect your heart. But tonight, they are breathing, and so are you. It's enough. The candle is burning low again, dripping wax like a slow heartbeat. You sit upright, back propped against a lumpy pillow, cradling the baby against your chest. It's almost peaceful. Almost. If you ignore the discomfort in your tailbone and the sweat that still clings to your skin, even though the night air is cool, you've entered what some call the second week danger zone. The early days of childbirth may be over, but this is the time when hidden dangers often emerge. Fevers, infections, milk sickness. No one says it aloud, but people are watching you closely, noting your color, your appetite, the steadiness of your hands. Even your dreams are considered diagnostic. The midwife visits again this morning. Aldith always arrives like a quiet storm, soft slippers, sharp eyes. She checks your pulse, sniffs your breath, seriously, and presses her hand against your belly. Still firm. That's good, she murmurs. If it turns soft and the lochia smells sweet, call me. You're not entirely sure what sweet means in this context, but the idea is disturbing enough. Milk is now the center of your world, well, your baby's world, and by extension, yours. The child cries if it comes too slow, gags if it comes too fast. Your breasts feel like overripe fruit, heavy and tender. You wake up in a puddle more than once, and your chemise is starting to look like it's been through a flood. Milk fever is something they talk about in whispers. It usually starts with aches and chills. Women call it the cold creeping in. Then comes the fever, the shakes, and sometimes death. Modern historians believe this was often caused by mastitis or breast infections. But to the medieval mind, it could be anything. Punishment from God, envy from a neighbor, or exposure to a cold draft, so they take precautions. You are wrapped in wool even on warm days. Your feet are kept covered at all times. Windows stay shut. No one lets you drink cold water. And every time someone visits, they bring some kind of talisman. Coins under the mattress, a twig of rosemary, a poppy seed sewn into a pouch. You can't help but wonder if all these traditions were invented simply to give people something to do when they had no control. Meanwhile, the baby develops their own rhythm. Waking, crying, suckling, sleeping, repeat. You're getting better at understanding the signals. One type of whimper means hunger. Another means the swaddling is too tight. You're still mystified by the mid-sleep screams, but Aldith tells you not to worry. They dream of the spirit world, still remembering the place between. She says, "Okay, then." You shift the baby to your other arm, wincing as you feel a sudden jolt in your lower back. That's the pelvic floor. Not a phrase anyone uses yet, but its presence is undeniable. You've heard whispers of women who never fully recover, whose muscles give out when lifting a bucket or who dribble when they laugh. They call it womb looseness. Some believe the womb literally wanders the body afterward. Hysteria. They say Tio warded off. One older woman suggests tying a stone around your middle to keep things anchored. You decline, politely. The apprentice brings you broth again, this time made from rabbit with chopped leeks and barley. You eat it slowly, grateful for anything warm and savory. "You're lucky," she says. "I heard about a woman last winter who bled so much they had to sew her shut with dog sinew." You choke slightly. "Sew her what?" She just shrugs. "Her underparts." Historians still argue whether actual suturing was used in postpartum care. Some references exist in medical texts, but it likely depended on where you lived, who your healer was, and whether they had access to anything vaguely sterile. More often, wounds were left to heal naturally, sometimes with salves made from honey, crushed herbs, or goose fat. Infection was common. Survival was not guaranteed. Despite everything, there's a rhythm forming. You nap during the baby's naps. You wash your face each morning with rose water, a little luxury Aldith encourages. You hum songs to yourself, some nonsense lullabies, Others old folk tunes about lost loves and winter storms. And people keep coming. A neighbor drops off a new bundle of cloth diapers. Well, old ones resewn. Another offers smoked fish. A young girl from the next village over shyly gifts a carved rattle. Community was vital in these weeks. In the absence of hospitals or professional nurses, it was neighbors and cousins who stepped in point one afternoon. A priest arrives. He's here to check in. Really, he wants to assess whether you're ready for your churching ceremony. You haven't left the house in over a week. He stands awkwardly near the door, trying not to stare. After all, you're still unclean in his eyes. You're not meant to enter holy places, touch holy items, or even walk near the altar. You offer him weak tea and force a smile. The churching rite, he reminds you, will happen on the 40th day if the baby lives that long. It's meant to purify you, to symbolically cleanse the birth blood and return you to society. It is for your soul's protection, he says, a little too cheerfully. You nod and say nothing, secretly wondering whether your soul was ever at risk to begin with. That night, the baby sleeps longer than usual. You wake suddenly in a panic, reach over, and place a trembling finger beneath their nose. Breath, still warm. You collapse back onto the straw mattress with relief. The room smells of milk and herbs and wax. The fire's almost out. You pull the blanket up, bury your nose in the baby's hair, and let your body soften for just a moment. In the quiet, you realize the worst might be over, for now. The fire crackles softly across the room as the days blur into each other. One morning fades seamlessly into the next, and before you realize it, you've been in your lying-in space for more than 2 weeks. The smell of smoke and milk and stale linen has become oddly comforting, like an unpleasant perfume you've simply accepted. But it's not all comfort. There's the nagging ache in your back that refuses to leave, and the occasional rush of blood that still catches you off guard. You check the linen daily, watching for signs, the smell, the color, the texture, because in this world, those tiny signs are your warning system. No blood tests, no thermometers, just fabric, instinct, and a very old midwife with a keen nose. You're still bleeding. Not dangerously, but enough to keep you alert. Aldith calls it the womb's farewell. She reassures you this is normal. It can go on for weeks. The womb takes its time saying goodbye. You try to find that comforting, but it's hard to when it feels like your body is whispering goodbye to you instead. The baby, at least, is thriving. Well, thriving for the 14th century. They're gaining weight, though no one uses that word. The apprentice just smiles and says, "They're less wrinkly now." You take that as a win.by now. You've discovered one of the great medieval secrets. Cabbage leaves. Yes, cabbage. Cooled, crushed, and tucked inside your bodice to soothe your breasts. It's not glamorous, but it does feel nice. Slightly slimy, slightly absurd, but nice. You laugh to yourself, imagining future people with fancy creams and sterile clinics, shaking their heads at your cabbage leaf routine. Or worse, repeating it with a smug, natural remedy label slapped on. The irony would be delicious. The other oddity? Your dreams. They're more vivid now, almost feverish. You dream of rivers and bridges and long staircases that go nowhere. Sometimes you hear your baby crying in the dream, only to wake up and realize they're still sleeping. Sometimes it's the other way around. Aldith says that's the spirit adjusting to motherhood. You're not sure, but you do start sleeping with your hand on the baby's chest, just in case. A visitor arrives late in the day. A woman from the next village who recently lost her child. She brings a bundle of lavender and a quiet look in her eyes. You sit together in near silence, the baby sleeping nearby, the air heavy with unspoken grief. Finally, she says, "They say each birth calls a name, but not every name is answered." You don't know what to say, so you just offer her a bowl of soup and a place by the fire. Grief is always hovering here. Some people pretend it's not. Others embrace it too tightly. You try to walk the line, honoring what's been lost without letting it consume what you still have. And yet, A part of you can't stop thinking about the ones who didn't make it, women like Rose, who bled out during her third birth, or Marin, who was too weak to nurse her baby and died by the next moon. Their names get whispered at firesides, their stories used as warnings or quiet lessons. Historians still argue how many women actually died in childbirth during the Middle Ages. Estimates vary widely. Some say 1 in 10, others suggest lower numbers. But even the lowest guesses are frightening by modern standards. And those figures don't include deaths weeks or months later from infections, hemorrhage, or malnutrition. The danger didn't stop once the baby was born. In many ways, that was just the beginning. Tonight, Aldith examines your belly again. She frowns slightly, not panic, just a crease between her brows. She fetches a poultice made of dried comfrey and ox fat, warming it by the hearth before applying it to your lower abdomen. "What's that supposed to do?" you ask. "Draw the womb's heat outward," she mutters. "Help it close up." "Does it work?" She shrugs. "Sometimes." The ambiguity is exhausting, but it's also the truth. Later, the apprentice quietly asks if the baby has been baptized yet. You blink. You haven't even thought of it. Technically, you did a quick washing right after birth, just in case. But now that the baby has lasted more than a week, it's time for the real ritual. The priest will want to come. There'll be salt and oil and maybe a feast, if anyone can spare the food. You agree, and preparations begin. The baptism is scheduled for the 7th day after your baby's quickening cry. A local superstition that the spirit only truly settles after a full week of life. Until then, the soul is still optional. You dress carefully the morning of the ceremony. It's your first time standing for more than a few minutes. Your knees tremble, your thighs feel hollow, but you're upright, and that's something. The baby is wrapped in swaddling cloths embroidered with your mother's initials. The fire crackles warmly. The priest arrives in his slightly threadbare robe, and the ceremony begins. Salt touches the baby's tongue. Oil touches their brow. Water drips over their forehead. The baby howls, not in pain, just confusion, and you find yourself smiling. A real smile, not out of politeness, not to reassure the others, but because, in that strange moment, something inside you settles. You've made it to this ritual. Not every mother does. And now, you're no longer just recovering, you're returning. Later that night, after the guests are gone and the priest has trudged back to the village with his flask of ale, you lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. Your body aches, your nipples sting, your back is a mess of knots. But there is also this small, growing confidence that maybe, just maybe, you'll survive this, not just survive it, live through it. And if cabbage leaves and comfort fat helped even a little, well, maybe that's something future people should remember too. The air smells different today. You catch it as soon as the shutters creak open. Fresh hay, wood smoke, and that slight metallic tang that means rain is coming. You shift in bed and feel the stiffness in your hips, the deep down kind that no amount of stretching fixes. Your belly is softer now, sunken. The bleeding has slowed, more rusty than red, more memory than threat. You wonder how women ever return to their normal lives after this. Well, normal is a stretch. You're not even close to that yet. You're nearing the end of your lying-in period, the traditional 30 to 40 days when a woman was expected to rest after childbirth. In theory, it's a recovery period. In practice, it's mostly seclusion. You're still not supposed to touch religious objects, not supposed to eat certain foods, and definitely not supposed to be seen too far from home. But the rules start to loosen. You sit up more often. You brush your own hair. The apprentice finally lets you pour your own wash basin. It feels like freedom, even if that freedom smells faintly of goat tallow soap. Your body, though, is an uncharted map. It's not the same one you had a month ago. The swelling in your ankles is gone, but your feet seem wider, somehow flatter. Your hips don't walk quite the same. The softness in your belly remains, like a wrinkled bag that once held something sacred. You try not to stare at it. Try to forgive it. They don't talk about this part much, the aftermath. They warn you about the pain of birth, the dangers, the bleeding, but not about the loneliness of healing. Not about how your body feels like a borrowed costume you're not ready to return, or the strangeness of loving something so much it rewires your sleep and speech and heartbeat. The baby is growing fast. Still nameless, technically, you're waiting for the churching ceremony, but you already call them a dozen things in your head. Little beetle, fire whaler, pudding face. They're starting to make noises that aren't just cries, coos and sighs and those odd little bubble sounds that somehow feel like a language just out of reach point one morning. Aldith gives you a wrapped bundle of dried herbs and a sly grin. "Time for the first bath," she says. "Didn't we already do that?" you ask, thinking of the rushed, splashy washing right after birth. That wasn't a bath. That was survival. This is tradition. So you heat water in the copper basin, steep the herbs, lavender, sage, marigold, and gently lower your squirming bundle into the warm infusion. The baby immediately flails, then relaxes, their little fists floating like jellyfish. You smile. A real one. It smells heavenly. You smell like something not soaked in milk or fear for once. The bath is not just for cleanliness. It's a ritual, a way of saying we made it past the edge, past the danger zone. This is life now. Ordinary, quiet, beautiful in its own awkward, cabbage-scented way. But of course, it's not all calm. There's the moment you stand too fast and feel the rush of dizziness crash into your chest. The time your stitches, if you were lucky enough to get any, start to itch in a way that's decidedly not healing. And there's the constant pressure from everyone around you, who's already wondering when you'll be back to normal. When will you grind grain again? When will you start weaving? Can you milk the goat yet? The answer, of course, is not yet. Still, you start practicing. You wash a few clothes, yours, the baby's. You carry small bundles of kindling. You knead a little dough, even though your wrists ache halfway through. There's pride in that. A strange sort of, I still exist pride. You overhear two neighbors outside the window discussing your recovery. "She's doing well," one says. Much better than Marin last year. She didn't get out of bed for 6 weeks. Well, Marin had twins. Poor soul. Didn't even make it to Candlemas." You stare at the ceiling again. It's a pattern now, that ceiling. You know every knot in the wood, every cobweb. But even so, it feels like the sky sometimes. Like looking upward is still allowed. You're also beginning to notice things beyond your recovery. Like how different women are treated depending on their social class. Lady Imelda in the manor house had her own chambermaid, linen sheets, and a trained herbalist to tend to her every hour. You got Aldith and a bowl of stew. Not that you're complaining, Aldith's stew probably saved your life, but still, the contrast is hard to ignore. Historians still argue whether women of higher classes had better outcomes in childbirth. On the one hand, they had access to more food, cleaner spaces, and sometimes even medical texts from the Arab world. On the other hand, they were more likely to undergo dangerous interventions, like early forced deliveries or tight-lacing corsets even while pregnant. Privilege was a double-edged sword. You remember an old tale told by the washerwomen about a noblewoman who died in labor because her physician insisted on using mercurial cleansing to purge her humors mid-birth. Whatever that meant, her maid survived and then promptly ran away with the nobleman's horse. You hope that story's true. Feels poetic. By the end of the 9th week, you feel not whole, but whole-ish. You still tire quickly. Your joints still ache when the weather shifts, but you can climb the stairs again without clutching the wall, and that counts for something. One evening, as you swaddle the baby and hum some half-forgotten lullaby, Aldith places a hand on your shoulder. "Not bad for your first time," she says. "Not bad at all," you reply, though you're already thinking ahead about how to avoid another birth like this one. Maybe there's a safer herb. Maybe next time you'll wrap your belly differently. Maybe next time. But no, you're not ready for next time. You've barely survived this one. So instead, you kiss your baby's head and let the candle burn a little longer tonight. There's time yet. You're allowed outside today. Not far and not for long, but enough. The sky opens above you like a clean bedsheet flapping in the breeze. The kind you haven't seen in what feels like forever. You step out onto the dirt path, your baby bundled in cloth against your chest, and the spring mud sucks gently at your heels. This, right here, is your first step back into the world. The timing is no coincidence. You're approaching your churching, the ceremonial reintegration of a woman into spiritual and social life after childbirth. And while it sounds noble and sacred, it's also wrapped up in centuries of suspicion and superstition. Because for all the joy around birth, medieval folks didn't quite trust it. Or you. For over a month, you've been considered unclean, spiritually tainted by the act of childbirth. Never mind that you've literally created life. In the minds of many, your bleeding, your sweat, even your touch could offend the divine. You haven't stepped foot in a church since labor. You haven't even been allowed to say certain prayers aloud. So the churching ritual serves two purposes. It's a thank you to God for your survival, and a formal purification to make you safe again. You walk to the church slowly, your baby nestled against your heartbeat. A small procession follows. Aldith, two neighbors, the priest's apprentice carrying a jar of consecrated salt. The church door is already open, and inside it smells of incense and damp stone. That scent always makes you sleepy. You kneel just at the entrance. The priest reads psalms over you. Then he sprinkles holy water across your brow, your hands, and your belly. The sacred triangle of womanhood. A short prayer, a Latin phrase you don't quite understand, a little salt pressed against your tongue. And then, just like that, you're back. Allowed into the congregation. Allowed to take communion again. Allowed to be seen as more than a baby vessel wrapped in cabbage leaves and superstition. It's oddly anticlimactic. No feast, no crown, just a nod from the priest and a soft pat on the shoulder. You suppose that's how survival often feels. Quiet, steady, slightly disappointing. Afterward, someone from the village stops you to ask what your baby will be named. You hadn't decided, but standing there in the cold sun, you pick something simple, something sturdy, something that won't be laughed out of a parish registry. The name sticks. The baby coos in your arms, oblivious to their new identity. Life moves forward, but the return to normal life isn't seamless. Now that you're no longer cloistered, the expectations rush in. You're asked to gather water again, to fetch firewood, to attend another woman's birth next month. You're expected to smile, to nurse discreetly, to raise your baby right while maintaining your role as daughter, wife, neighbor, laborer. You want to scream, or maybe sleep. Instead, you do what medieval women always did. You carry on. Your body still doesn't feel like yours. Your joints crack like old furniture. The soles of your feet feel too thin. And sometimes, when no one is around, you press your fingers to the soft pouch of your belly and whisper, "Thank you." Because against all odds, against bloodletting and poor sanitation and suspicious herbs, you made it. The memory of birth doesn't vanish. It returns in flashes. The sweat-soaked rush, the slap of a wet cloth, the moment your baby first wailed. That wail is now a daily chorus, but somehow more bearable. You've learned to recognize the different kinds. The "I'm cold" whimper, the "I need milk" growl, the "I just felt the breeze and am furious about it" shriek. People ask if you'll have another. The question always catches you off guard. The truth is, you don't know. You're still healing. You still dream about the pain. You still wince when you pass the place where your waters broke. Historians still argue whether medieval women feared childbirth more than death. Some say yes, citing diaries and church records full of frantic prayers and whispered promises. Others say no, that women accepted it as a cycle, part of life's natural order. But those historians didn't bleed on the floor. They didn't count their breath in candle flickers. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between. There are other mothers nearby, and slowly you find them. One woman invites you to sit with her during her evening weaving. She had 3 children, lost one to a fever. She doesn't say much, but her presence is anchoring. Another woman gives you a small pouch of dried thyme and tells you to sleep with it under your pillow to chase away ghost pains. You do, because why not? There's a silent sisterhood here, stitched together by shared pain and quiet resilience. You didn't realize how much you needed it until now. One night, you light a candle and write your baby's name on a scrap of bark, tucking it inside the rafters. A silly thing, but it feels right. A way to say, you were here. You mattered. We both did. There's still more healing to do. You know that. But at least now, you're no longer walking through it alone. The village sees you. The church sees you. You see yourself. And that's a beginning. The days stretch longer now, the light lingering like a guest who doesn't want to leave. You start to mark time not by your own healing, which, while slow, is happening, but by the baby's tiny milestones. A tighter grip, a longer sleep, the first gummy smile that feels like a sunrise just for you. But time doesn't pause for any mother. And just when you think you've mastered the art of keeping your baby dry, warm, and somewhat quiet, a new challenge thumps its way into your life like a goat through an open garden gate. Feeding. Now you've been nursing since birth. There wasn't really a choice. Wet nurses are for nobility or those lucky enough to afford them. And cow's milk. Well, good luck getting a cow to stand still long enough to fill a spoon, let alone a bottle. So your own body became the source of everything. Comfort, sustenance, sanity. But supply isn't always reliable. You have good days where the baby feeds easily and dozes off in that milk-drunk days. And you have bad days where they squirm and cry and your breasts feel like they're made of stone and fire at the same time. You try everything: warm compresses, salt rubs, soft cloths soaked in beer, because someone once claimed that worked. Doesn't. Mostly it just makes you smell like a half-empty tavern. The village midwives each have their own opinions. Too much rye in your diet, one says, makes your milk sour. Not enough rest, another chimes in. Milk dries up if you talk too much, or if you dream of wolves. You blink. Wolves? She nods gravely. Historians still argue whether medieval lactation advice was more folklore or function. The truth is probably both. Some remedies were based on real observations. Others, like wearing a garlic clove in your hair to keep your baby feeding, might have been more spiritual placebo than science. Still, you try it. Garlic can't hurt, right? Then there's the fear that creeps in late at night, when the baby won't latch and your chest aches like firewood left in the sun. You whisper prayers you didn't even know you remembered. You ask Saint Margaret for help, because someone once told you she protects women and children. You promise to give up honey for a month if the baby feeds just once without crying. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. That's just how it is. You begin to notice that other women carry the same fatigue in their shoulders, the same way their eyes search a room before they sit, making sure no one will shame them for nursing openly. Some of them don't nurse at all. Maybe they had too many children too fast, or their bodies simply gave out. They rely on goat milk thickened with barley mash, or bread soaked in broth until it's nearly porridge. Not ideal, but it's better than nothing. One woman tells you she was told to chew fennel seed every morning to make her milk sweeter. Another swears by warm beer. Another says her baby only started nursing properly after she sang to him, same lullaby every time. So you try that too. You hum even when your throat feels raw, even when your voice shakes. And wouldn't you know it, the baby latches and feeds and burps like a small, contented bear. You celebrate that moment in your head for the rest of the week. But feeding is just one part of the endless puzzle. There are nights when your baby won't sleep unless you walk in circles. Tight, endless loops around the small cottage like a pilgrim trapped in ritual. You step carefully over the creaky board by the hearth. You hum under your breath. You mutter words that no longer have meaning but sound vaguely soothing. It's ridiculous. And it works. One night, As you pace with your baby pressed to your chest, your partner, finally home from a week of hauling timber, asks if there's anything he can do. Trade bodies with me. You joke. He doesn't laugh. He just takes the baby, rocking them in his thick arms until they settle, which feels both unfair and miraculous. The next morning, you teach him how to wash cloth nappies without tearing them. He listens. Progress. You talk with Aldith more these days. Not about herbs or feeding, but about life. She tells you stories from her own births. The child she lost at 3 months. The fever that nearly took her after her second. The time she bled so much they thought she wouldn't see sunrise. You never realized how much she carried behind that quiet, steady voice. Childbirth is like going to war, she says, scrubbing her hands in a bucket of rainwater. Only difference is, no one sings songs about our battles. You nod. That feels truer than anything you've heard in weeks. Still, there's joy here, too. You start to see it between the cracks of exhaustion and pain. In your baby's crooked smile. In the way their little fists find your finger and hold on tight. In the way your body, despite everything, keeps showing up, keeps healing, keeps giving. You stop thinking about returning to your old self. That person is gone. But this new self, the one who survived childbirth, who learned to hum away pain, who can nurse and soothe and clean a wound with one hand. She's not so bad. You still struggle, of course. Some nights you cry into a dish rag because the idea of dinner is too much. Some mornings you stare at the hearth fire and feel like a ghost. But there are more good days now, and good days count. You even start keeping a small tally on a piece of wood by the door. Every time the baby sleeps longer than 4 hours. Every time you manage to brush your hair. Every time you laugh. The notches are small, but they add up. A quiet monument to your slow return. There comes a point, quietly without announcement, when people stop asking how you're doing and start expecting you to be fine. It's subtle, a slight change in tone, a few less visits, an unspoken shift from, "How are you recovering?" to, "Can you help churn the butter?" You feel it most on market day. The village green is crowded with the usual chaos. Baskets of dried herbs, apples bruised from travel, chickens underfoot, one goat that refuses to cooperate with its tether. You haven't been to market since your 3rd month. And now, with your baby bundled tight against your chest, you're expected to haggle over onions like everything hasn't changed. You catch your reflection in a tin mirror. There's someone tired looking back. Eyes deeper, jaw sharper, expression more measured. But you're still here, still walking, still buying onions, and still bleeding. Because no one told you postpartum bleeding might last for weeks, maybe months. It ebbs, sure, but just when you think it's gone, it returns like an unwanted guest. Some days it's a pale stain. Other days it feels like your body is still whispering, "Remember what you did." Aldith says it's normal. She hands you more dried moss for padding and a bundle of wool strips soaked in yarrow. You nod like you believe her, but there's still that gnawing voice in the back of your mind asking, what if something's wrong? Historians still argue whether most medieval women understood the stages of recovery or simply endured them in silence. Diaries and letters are rare, and when they do mention bleeding, it's usually framed in the context of sin or spiritual purification, not biology. There were no terms like postpartum complications, no support groups, no guidebooks with checklists and warning signs, just whispers passed between women about what to expect or survive. And yet, somehow you learn to make makeshift pads from rags and ash. You boil water with lavender and sit over it, hoping the steam will soothe what aches. You stay up late, rewashing linens by the firelight, because the baby decided midnight was bath time. Again. And still, life presses on. Your partner talks of the next harvest. The village elder asks you to help mend robes for the chapel. Someone else leaves a turnip pie by your door with a note scrawled in charcoal. For the strong mother. You appreciate it. You really do. But part of you wants to shout, strong doesn't mean fine. Still, you smile, say thank you, eat the pie. Because this is what's expected. Medieval life doesn't wait for emotions to catch up. There's always work, always someone hungrier, dirtier, sicker than you. The motto isn't take care of yourself, it's do what needs doing. And yet, something changes the day your baby laughs for the first time. A real laugh. Not just a gurgle or hiccup, but a full, bubbling sound that rises from their belly and spills into yours. You almost drop the spoon you're holding. It's such a small thing, and yet it feels like the world shifted a little to the left. You laugh too, then you cry, then you laugh again. The baby doesn't mind. They're too busy discovering that their own sounds can make you smile. Later, you take them outside, just past the edge of the field, to where the wild chamomile grows. You sit on the ground, press your bare feet into the cool soil, and let the wind wrap around you like a shawl. In moments like these, you begin to forgive your body. Not because it's perfect, but because it's still here. You start stretching again. Not formally, no one has time for that, but in small, stolen ways. Bending just a little longer before picking up a pail. Reaching for a pot with both arms. Twisting your back and waiting for the satisfying pop that means you're not entirely broken. You try to remember who you were before childbirth, but the memories are fuzzy. That woman feels like a cousin you used to know. Someone with a similar laugh, a familiar walk, but a different center of gravity. You mourn her a little, then you let her go. And instead, you focus on what's next, which is, well, everything. There's weaning to think about, though that won't be for many moons. There's your first festival with a baby in tow, where you'll try not to drop them in a muddy lane while dancing. There's the endless question of whether you'll go through it again. Another child, another brush with danger, another reshaping of body and soul. You don't know. No one does. And that's okay. At tea market, you notice other mothers carrying the same tired eyes and soft pride. One has 3 children clinging to her shawl. Another has a babe no older than yours, sleeping in a sling patched with dyed thread. You make eye contact and share a nod, the universal symbol for yes, this is impossible. And yes, we're doing it anyway. Someone spills lentils near your feet. You kneel to help gather them, even though your knees ache and the baby wriggles and one of your breasts is leaking ever so slightly. No one comments. No one offers help. You manage anyway. It's not glamorous, but it is real, and it's yours. The life you've rebuilt from sweat, moss, pain, and laughter. The body that didn't listen to every command but still did the hardest job in the world. The mind that survived not just the birth, but everything that came after. No medals, no ballads, just a woman standing in a field holding a child who just learned to laugh. And somehow that's enough. The seasons shift again. The mornings turn crisp, and mist hangs low over the fields like the breath of giants. You wake to the scent of damp straw and wood smoke, your baby tucked beneath layers of linen and wool. The rhythm of life begins to settle. Not exactly easier, but at least familiar. You've learned which cries mean hunger, which mean pain, and which are just your baby testing the acoustics of their own lungs. You've figured out how to rock them with your foot while kneading bread. You've even dared to go out without them once, just a quick trip to fetch water, but still a small victory. And now you're noticing something new. Whispers, mostly, from the older women, the aunts and neighbors and alderwives. Talk of confinement, but not the kind you endured before birth. This is the other kind, the cultural kind. The quiet judgment that settles on you like fine dust. You're still in your postpartum year. And in some communities, especially under the sway of church influence, that means you're considered unclean. Not because of anything you did, but simply because your body has given birth, and that apparently makes you a kind of liminal creature. Half sacred, half suspect. It's not universal. Different villages and regions had different customs, but some common threads appear in the records. Many women weren't allowed to return to church until they'd undergone a purification ritual called churching, a small blessing ceremony meant to thank God for your survival. Harmless enough on the surface, but it carried a subtle implication. that you were in some way spiritually stained until that moment. Historians still argue whether churching was embraced by women as a welcome rite of passage or resented as yet another reminder that their bodies were never quite their own. Perhaps both were true. In your case, it's a bit more awkward than sacred. Aldith tells you your time has come. She helps you prepare, cleans your gown, plaits your hair, even lends you a sprig of rosemary to tuck under your belt. To keep the bad humors out, she says, though whether she means physical or spiritual, you're not entirely sure. At the chapel, you kneel. You mumble the words. The priest doesn't look directly at you, just waves his hand, utters a blessing, and moves on. There's no music, no applause, no confetti from the rafters. You walk out the same woman, only now people will stop talking behind your back about when you'll be clean. You're back in society's fold. Congratulations. Later that evening, while wrapping your baby in a fresh cloth, you wonder how many other women felt that same mix of relief and irritation. You didn't feel unclean before, but now that you've been made clean, you're expected to be grateful. It's a strange sensation, like someone giving you a medal for surviving a shipwreck and then blaming you for getting wet in the first place. Your partner asks how it went. You shrug. He said words. I didn't burst into flames. That's probably a good sign. Still, the ritual seems to mark a turning point. People start inviting you places again. Someone asks if you'd like to join the spinning group next month. You consider it. You're not sure if you want to spin wool or just sit near other people who speak in full sentences. You try to write a little, carving letters into a small scrap of bark with a bit of charcoal. Nothing grand, just your baby's name. The letters are clumsy, and the charcoal smears, but you stare at it anyway. Proof that you're still thinking, still reaching. Still you. At night, dreams return. Sometimes gentle fields of clover, your child toddling through wildflowers. Sometimes strange. Masked figures, flooded cellars, your womb speaking in riddles. You wake with a dry mouth and a fluttering chest, and you're never sure what part was real. You tell Aldith. She nods. It's the soul closing the door behind the baby. Takes a while. You don't ask what happens if the door doesn't close. Some questions are better left to folklore. One day, you catch yourself humming while working. A real tune, not just a lullaby, but a melody you used to sing before all this. You pause, surprised. You didn't think that part of you still existed. You hum it again, just to make sure. And there she is, your old self. Not back exactly, but peeking through, like a shadow at the edge of the hearth. You smile. That's enough. Still, there are moments of strangeness, like when your breasts leak in public and a man glances away awkwardly, as if you've cast a spell. Or when your own mother visits and insists you're holding the baby wrong, even though said baby is sleeping peacefully with one fat fist shoved in their mouth like a roasted pear. Or when a stranger tells you, now that you've had one, the next will be easier. You smile politely, all while your uterus whispers a quiet hell no from somewhere beneath your ribs. You grow stronger, but never return to what you were. That's the quiet truth of postpartum life in any era, but especially here, where survival is already a feat the bleeding slows. Your hands grow calloused again. You start making plans, small ones, mending that cloak, walking to the far edge of the field, teaching your child to track beetles with a stick. These are victories. 2.1 evening. After a long day of laundry, you sit by the river with your baby swaddled at your side. The sun is sinking, throwing orange over everything, and the water ripples with lazy fish. You think about the women who came before you, who birthed in barns, in caves, in silence. You wonder how many of them lived to see their children grow. How many named their babies after the saints, after the seasons, after the things they never had. And you feel a quiet kinship, not with saints or queens, but with them, the anonymous mothers of the past. The ones who scrubbed and stitched and rocked and bled and hoped. You are one of them now, and somehow that doesn't feel heavy. It feels like a kind of belonging. Time becomes a little stranger now that you're no longer counting the days since childbirth. Just the moons, maybe the milestones. The first laugh, the first tooth, the first time your baby grabs a beetle and tries to eat it, and you discover a scream you didn't know you were capable of. Your days have a rhythm again, although it's not the one you knew before. Wake, nurse, work, pause, nurse again, stir the pot, clean the cloths, patch the leak, repeat. Your world is smaller now, sometimes no farther than the edge of the village, but it's also deeper, layered with the soft repetitions of survival. And then there's the pressure. Not from your body this time, but from others. You'll want another soon. Someone says one morning, handing you a jug of milk like that's just a normal thing to mention. Good to have them close together. Keep the cloths warm. You force a laugh, but it sticks on the way out. Another? Already. Your womb still feels like it's wearing yesterday's bruises. Your mind can barely hold the list of chores, let alone the idea of another birth. And yet, in medieval life, child spacing isn't always a choice. There's no reliable contraception, unless you count folk remedies, which range from mildly ineffective to wildly terrifying. You hear rumors about herbs, pennyroyal, silphium, queen anne's lace. Some say they can delay a pregnancy. Others say they'll delay your life permanently. Historians still argue whether these plants were effective or just desperate hopes crushed into tea. One woman you know swears by holding amethyst under her tongue on feast days. Another claims sleeping with garlic cloves in her shoes keeps the spirits and sperm away. You nod politely, take notes you'll never use, and double layer your moss pads just in case. The truth is, in this world, childbearing isn't just a phase. It's a lifelong cycle. A loop you step into, sometimes willingly, sometimes not. And for many medieval women, the loop doesn't stop until your body finally says, enough. You think about the matron who lives by the well. She's had 8, maybe 9 children. She walks with a limp and talks to herself sometimes. They say she once gave birth standing up because there wasn't time to lie down. You see her watching you occasionally, her eyes soft, as if she knows what you're thinking. You want to ask her, how did you do it? But you never do. Instead, you watch your baby sleep, their breath rising and falling like a tide you can actually predict. And for a moment, you imagine what it would be like if this were your only child. One perfect, difficult miracle. But the village doesn't think in singulars. It thinks in lineage, in manpower, in hands for the harvest and arms for the war. Your body isn't just yours. It's the future's, so you begin to walk a careful line between gratitude and caution, between the warmth of your child and the shadow of another. You sleep with a blade under your pillow, not for protection, but because it's said to cut away the spirits that bring conception. You don't believe it, but you also haven't put it away. Meanwhile, your cycle returns. At first, you think it's just more postpartum bleeding. Then you track the days, squint at the pattern, and sigh. Your fertility has returned like a tax collector, unsympathetic and punctual. You try to talk to your partner about it, gently, hints at first, then a bit more direct. We could wait, you suggest. He nods, then shrugs. If God wills it, that phrase, that ever-present phrase, both comfort and curse. And yet, this is the world you live in, where a woman's health is mostly guesswork, her choices often shaped more by nature and custom than by her own desires. Where love exists, yes, but so does obligation and expectation. But you're not without power. You learn to read the rhythms of your body like a tide chart. You brew teas not for contraception, but to ease the ache. You wear certain colors to ward off gossip. You place iron scissors under the mattress, not because they do anything, but because it makes you feel like you've done something. You talk to Aldith more now. She's older than most, with joints that creak like wet wood, but her memory is sharp and full of useful contradictions. Don't lie with him the night after full moon, she tells you once, or only lie with him the night after full moon. Depends who you ask. She laughs like it's a joke. You're not entirely sure. Still, you keep her advice close, because in a world with so few tools, information is the tool. even if it comes wrapped in superstition and nettle poultices. Sometimes, in the quiet between chores, you wonder what kind of mother you've become. Not the perfect one. Your temper's shorter now. Your back aches more. You occasionally hide behind the water barrel just to eat a plum in peace. But you love fiercely. You comfort with real words. You notice when your baby's cough sounds different. You remember which songs calm them best. And when someone says, "You're lucky to have survived the birth," you nod, but part of you whispers, "I didn't just survive it. I rose from it." You look at your hands, still cracked, still rough, and realize they're not just the hands of a mother. They're the hands of someone who endured something ancient, brutal, transformative. You belong to a lineage older than any chapel, older than kings, mothers who bled and boiled moss and sang lullabies in caves, castles, and crumbling cottages. You're one of them now. And whatever comes next, another child, another storm, another shift, you know this, you're not starting from nothing. You've built a life out of straw and scars, and you know how to hold on. Even if you have to do it one beetle rescue at a time. A year passes, maybe more. You don't mark the days as sharply now. The child who once fit in the crook of your elbow now toddles across the yard with fists full of dirt and a laugh that could scare off foxes. You've learned their moods like you once learned the phases of the moon, waxing, waning, and sometimes full of mysterious howls. Your body is not what it was before birth, and it's certainly not what it was before pregnancy. But it's yours again, in a way. It aches, yes. Your joints click. You sometimes lose strands of hair in worrying handfuls. But your arms are strong from carrying, your back steady from bending. You've been rebuilt, not restored. You still nurse sometimes. The church has mixed feelings about that, of course. Some priests frown upon nursing beyond infancy. Others praise it as a virtuous maternal act. Historians still argue whether medieval women weaned early out of necessity, or whether extended breastfeeding was more common than the records admit. You suspect the answer, as always, depends on the harvest. In your case, you keep nursing as long as it feels right. It buys you a little time, maybe, a natural spacing, though nothing is guaranteed. You remember Aldith whispering that milk in the breast means the womb sleeps. You hope she's right. Still, you remain cautious. You've heard the stories. The women who bore child after child until their bodies gave out. The ones whose names fade from the records except as wife of or mother to. The ones who died with their feet in the birthing straw and their hands gripping the bedposts. Martyrs not to war or religion, but to biology and expectation. But then there are the quiet legends, too. The women who outlived their husbands, raised 7 children, ran farms, told jokes. The ones who knew which roots to boil and how to curse in Latin when the mood struck. The ones who held their babies in the crook of one arm and a scythe in the other. You decide you'd like to be one of them. So you learn balance. Some mornings you wake early and take a moment just for yourself. Not long, just enough to stretch your arms, press your palms to your face, and say, "Still here." Other days you lose your patience. Your child smears honey into the thatch or dumps ashes into the stew pot, and you nearly weep. Then you laugh instead, because really, what else can you do? You notice the way the other women watch you now. Not with the wary curiosity they once had, but with familiarity, as if you've passed some test. You're no longer a girl. You're no longer expecting. You're one of the mothers now. One of them. Sometimes a younger woman will come to you, eyes wide, hand on her belly. You'll make tea. You'll talk gently. You'll say things you wish someone had said to you. "It's not all pain," you tell her. "There's a rhythm to it, and you'll find your breath." You don't sugarcoat it. You mention the blood, the fear, the hours that stretch like dark rivers. But you also tell her about the moment after, the strange silence, the tiny cries, the way the world tilts and resets. You don't claim to know everything, but you know enough. And now, in the warmth of a rare, still evening, you find yourself sitting outside again. Your child asleep in a basket beside you, the sky wide above, the wind soft as wool against your cheek. You remember that first night, not long after the birth, the pain, the moss, the prayers muttered between contractions. It feels like another life. You breathe in, you exhale slowly, and you realize childbirth in the Middle Ages wasn't just bad because it hurt. It was bad because you had to do it with so little medicine, so little understanding, so little help unless you were lucky. But even with all that, somehow women did it, over and over. Some died, many suffered, but some you survived. And that matters, because survival in this world is its own form of rebellion. It's the quiet, daily miracle no bard will sing about, but it's real. And now you carry that legacy of soot and sweat, of lullabies and lost teeth, of whispered herbs and clutched hands and stories passed on like heirlooms. You get up, stretch your arms, and feel the weight of the child in the basket. Not heavy, just solid. Real. You're tired. Your back hurts. You forgot to patch the roof. But you're still here. And that, in this time, is everything. Word count, 1,052. Wind down, 300 words. The fire crackles low. The sounds of the village have faded. No more bleating goats, no hammering of carts, just the slow hush of twilight. Your child sleeps now, fingers curled, breath soft and even. And you, too, finally rest your shoulders against the worn stone of the hearth. There's nothing left to do tonight. The pots are clean, the floor swept, the stories told. The aches will wait until morning, and so will the plans. You've done enough. Outside, the stars begin to blink into view, small silver freckles on the vast canvas of sky. A breeze moves through the grass, gentle, rhythmic, almost like the breath of something older than time. And in that quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, you feel it, that echo of generations behind you. All the women who walked this road before, who groaned in the straw and whispered prayers and stared into the same firelight, wondering if they'd live to see another dawn. You're not alone. You never were. Let that knowledge settle like warm cloth around your shoulders. Let the stillness ease the tightness from your hands. Let your thoughts drift now, not to the work ahead or the worries waiting, but to something simple. A field in bloom, a lullaby half remembered, the weight of your child's hand in yours. The night is long, but kind, and you have earned your rest. Close your eyes now, breathe in, and let go.